CBS's 60 Minutes had a surprising ending to their show last night.
Here's reporter Scott Pelley.
A note on Bill Owens, who until this past week was executive producer of 60 Minutes. But our parent company, Paramount, is trying to complete a merger. The Trump administration must approve it. Paramount began to supervise our content in new ways. None of our stories has been blocked, but Bill felt he lost the independence that honest journalism requires.
Pelley ended by saying that while nobody was happy about Owens resigning, the fact that he did shows that he was the right person for the job. So this is a big controversy, Bofta, because there is a merger going on, and so Sherry Redstone, the woman in charge, is getting a lot of criticism from fellow liberal media journalist people over the decision to, I guess, make 60 Minutes fall in line. I have a couple things to say about this. So I am no fan of 60 Minutes in recent weeks. I think some of their segments have become increasingly totally unhinged. They had a report on Havana syndrome that was one of the weirdest things I've ever seen involving, do you remember this? They had
I didn't catch that
a
one.
whistleblower that they said they were going to disguise her appearance, and they just like put her in a weird wig and you could still clearly tell who it is. It was so strange. And then this report on the German hate speech policies, which I have criticized on Rising any number of times. Now look, they should make whatever editorial judgments they think are appropriate. They do work for a company, and when you work for a company, you will face pressures like this. You know, I know liberals are seeing this as an example of corporate ownership muzzling a editorial or a journalistic product. Is that how you see it?
Well, you know, I think it's interesting that the timing of all of this, it's the timing of the merger, and they need the Trump administration apparently to approve that merger, and I think that's really the crux of it all. And I think that, you know, 60 Minutes is a show that's been on air, goodness, since I was a kid. I remember watching it. And I think anytime that you have a longtime producer, 24 years apparently at that program, 37 years at the company, who's saying I'm not getting the same independence in terms of making strong editorial decisions as we used to, that they should pay attention to that, because that's also what makes people drawn to the show, is that they did at one point, even if, you know, I know the past couple of weeks you weren't a fan of their program, but they have gone after controversial matters over the years. They've had presidential leaders. I mean, they've had so many different winning moments. And so I think that part of what's praised about 60 Minutes and the reason why they've had success for so long is because of the nature of the way they did it. So I think stripping that away, that independence, that editorial eye, is sad for journalism. I think it's a sad moment. But like you said, it's part of the greater scheme of the company, and that's who you work for, and they're trying to get a merger done, and that's business. So,
right, and you ask, or you point out the Trump administration aspect of it all, to which I say, look, I would be happy to live in a world where the government does not scrutinize business mergers, business decisions, acquisitions, but this is the progressive antitrust desire to have the federal government take a greater role in regulating just that, in fighting, you know, so-called monopolies. If you have an ideology that says the federal government gets to review such things, then it will, by its very nature, always end up being political, as it is in this case, as it is in so many other cases. So, you know, I would be fine to say, no, who cares what the Trump people have to say? They can merge, they can sell to whoever they want. But that's just not the world we live in, because it's a world erected by progressives.
well, look, I think that there's a balance in it, right? So to have one company, there's a reason why there is some regulations, is to make sure that not everyone is falling under one company, and that everything's the Google, everything's the Amazon, everything's the Facebook. It's allowing for more distribution. So I'm not anti-mergers. Mergers happen in business, but it's just to make sure.
Competing against each other. None of those things are monopolies, right? They're all competing against each other.
Well, it's my point is that, you know, there is a balance to be kind of struck here. Instead of saying all or nothing, I think that there is some middle ground. We do need some regulations, but do we need? And I'm not speaking. I don't know the details of this particular merger to go into the paperwork like a lawyer. But what we do know is that, you know, there is some government regulations when they make sense. It's important to do, but unfortunately, there is politics in this case, especially because it's the Trump administration, and we know that the Trump administration has sued at one point 60 Minutes for their interview with Kamala Harris after the 2024 election. So it's political,
that
right?
Interview
it's political.
Was edited poorly, in my view. I think they made Kamala Harris look a little bit better, although she didn't look very good in both the edited and the unedited versions of her response to that question. I don't think it's something to sue over. I don't agree with the
look. Let's be honest. I mean, stuff is left on the cutting room floor all the time. I mean, you can't have 10-hour pieces that are just airing unless you're doing YouTube or something like that. I mean, there's a time limit to things, and editorial decisions are made all the time. I mean, you're cutting and editing all the time, and so discernment is needed. And so, if somebody doesn't agree with the editorial decisions, that's why it's important to have longtime producers who have experience, like the producer who decided to leave, because they do have that editorial eye, and they're looking to make sure things are fair and balanced. So
she was asked an example. Give us an example. The question was about the Biden administration's influence over the Israeli government in terms of what they're doing in Gaza, and she was basically asked, well, give us an example of something you pushed back on and you stopped them from doing some action that the U.S. government didn't want because we've just given them totally full-throated support. An issue that was impacting support for Democrats among more Palestinian sympathetic constituencies in Michigan and other places. Very relevant question. And, it was a long, I'm doing her Kamala Harris answer.
I was waiting for you.
We were all waiting for the answer, and then she kind of stumbled through it. That pause where she has no answer was, I thought...
important to keep in.
Yes, important to keep in, and they decided not to. But I'm never happy about anyone, losing their jobs. That's a sad thing. Although this person stepped away. Decided, look, it's good to protect your own integrity. If you feel pushed to do something by a company, a journalistic institution, and you're not comfortable with it, that's the right course of action. So, I guess good on him for that. I've become increasingly not a huge fan of this product as it is.
Yeah. Well, he was making a stand, and he clearly did, and look, we're talking about it, so saying something. Okay, hope on the horizon for Kristi Noem to get her stolen Gucci purse back. Updates on that next.